We have 2 hours today and 3 hours scheduled for tomorrow evening to hopefully conclude the budget deliberation and vote. Let me jump in first and maybe give some thoughts about where I think we should go today. So we had the list that the superintendent and the administration gave of adjustments, potential budget adjustments that went from 5.5% increase to 2.89, and then another set 2.89 to flat. Now, while it's not the administration's recommendations that we make those adjustments, those nevertheless are adjustments that are on the table that we need to discuss and understand the implications of each one of them to determine whether those are adjustments that, as a board, we would actually agree to, or we would not. So I actually sent around. I sent to Bill and Phil last night basically a list, and that list includes all of the adjustments that were on the table between 5.5% and flat. Now, in my own, yeah, hand that out.
There should be enough here for everybody plus public.
Consolidates the entire.
Yeah, it's coming around.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing new.
Thank you.
So there are two things that are not on this list that I don't think are specifically actionable. One is reducing a cabinet level position, and the other one is the $50-some-odd sort of yet to be found stuff. Everything else, yeah, everything else is just exactly as it appears on the two lists that were handed out. Now, what I attempted to do in a very non-scientific, and probably got this somewhat wrong, but anyway, I attempted it. What I attempted to do is really separate things out into sort of three broad categories of what we had outlined in our guidelines. One is, you know, what is in the administrative services lines, right? What is in the program, you know, what affects programs and what affects class size. So in that order, 3, 2, and 1, right? 1 at the bottom because all of the adjustments there that are at the bottom, in my view, affect the class size. The 1s and 2 are everything that I saw that seemed to affect programs, and the 1s and 3 are sort of others that either I thought were more administrative and or I didn't understand exactly what they were. So, and 4 was just the dental claims that we wanted to move to the internal services fund. So I thought, you know, instead of now going through what us as board members view as additional things, because additional things, I guess if they don't appear on this list, additional things would even be worse, because if they were better, in terms of less impact, they probably would appear on this list. So let's hold off on additional things, and let's assume that either they haven't been thought of, which I doubt, or if they were thought of, they were not put on the list, because anything we would come up with would probably be worse than this. So, but let's just hold off for a second on that before. What I'd like to do is really go through this list and understand on each one of these what the impact is and what mitigants there are in terms of if we don't have that, what are we doing instead, and ultimately, is it something, just better understanding of each of these line items before we agree as a board to say, yeah, we would do this, or no, we absolutely wouldn't do this. Let's exhaust this list first before we get to any additional items that us as board members want to put on the list. Because right now, from a point of view of specific items, this is the only list we have.
It's been provided to us.
Yeah, and so let's go through this. We have 2 hours today, 3 hours tomorrow. There's enough time to go through this list and then come up with other things that people have been thinking about in terms of adding to the list. And then we can talk about that after that. And then this was kind of my way of being a little bit more systematic about going through things, because we have like 5 hours and I think we need to get through a lot. And so I don't think we've really gone through this list in enough detail to really understand exactly what we would keep on the table as adjustments and whatnot. So let's start at the top and go down this list and
just
Bill.
clarifying question, because if the groupings mean anything, I don't know that there are a lot of adjustments here, but there's one that jumps out quite substantially. And I was looking for the cover email that explained the categories. So again, 3 is what?
3 means, it's sort of, 1 means, let's start from the back. 1 means things that affect class size, 2 is things that affect program, and 3 is things that I either didn't really understand which cost center it was in, or it affects some sort of non-building cost center.
So the library media specialist, that would completely undermine your ability to do all kinds of programming in the school. So in your categorization, I think that's going to be the 2.
Okay.
Because
that's fine.
Some of the others on the list get a little, because we could spend all day with some.
Let's forget about the categorization right now.
If you can do anything with this list, sort of the implications there are gigantic for a program. You could argue curriculum instruction, that's a big program impact, as well as the team leaders. Again, almost everything up here is going to have a programmatic impact. But I think just in terms of personnel, the library media specialist and the team leaders, that's programmatic impact. And within the CNI, Ken, that was the pulling back on the target investment, right?
You're talking about the one in the consult.
It just says curriculum and instruction.
That .4.
That's the .4. That's the math intervention.
Yeah, so that's programmatic as well.
Okay.
So,
I think categories are null and void. I think we should just go through line item by line item.
Yeah.
So if you're not using the categories, fine. But if the categories have meaning to you, I just want to.
So I guess the point is we're more heavily geared towards reductions in programs. I get it. No. Okay. So let's start at the top, right? Well, we know the internal services fund. We talked about that quite a bit. The question, I guess, on the table, Phil, was whether that $1.3 million in the internal services fund is the projection for the end of the year, or a spot projection, and where would we be at the end of the year?
So based on our current trend, we'll be somewhere close to $1 million based on current trend.
But at the million at the end of the year.
At the end of the year, correct.
And so this would take it down to 6-ish.
No, this would
Five-ish.
take it back up.
Oh, to put it back up.
Correct, we'll put it,
Fine.
right. No, it would not.
Well, no, this would take it down if
That's
with
what
the
I mean.
trend continue.
No. So at the end of FY 20,
Right.
we will be close to
A
$1 million.
million.
If we draw down on that fund, that will reduce it by additional 400 to book it at 600 because it's not a transfer from operating
Right.
to savings.
So that's the risk we would take. If
That
the
is
trend
correct.
continued, we would be at the end of the next budget cycle, we would be at approximately 600 to 700.
That is
somewhere in
correct.
that. Okay.
So that item, Tony, then is not a fait accompli, is that?
No, I think we have to come back and talk about whether we want to
today to eliminate things from this list or give the green light to things on this list?
I think it's, I think if things that we really want to eliminate, we should just eliminate them all.
Okay.
I'd rather make a decision about if we all agree that something should not, I mean, I think that things that are still, I mean, we don't have every board member, but I think if there are things that we all agree that should be eliminated from this list, we should just eliminate them.
Okay.
What we can do, it's rough, but Phil, he can keep a running tab of mathematically what the
Yeah.
implications are, because often right now it's helpful to see what this is leaving you in terms of a growth number.
Yeah.
And then Tony, do you know kind of how Board of Finance views our internal services fund in terms of, now it's gonna be the second year in a row that we're gonna be drawing from it, so do you know their take on it?
Yeah, I think they probably will be, they probably will not be happy dipping that low. Then the question is going to be, it's just deferring it, really. What you're doing is deferring. So it's a question,
Can it be that low temporarily?
probably. The technology, software, and equipment line, I think we went through it before, but Craig, a little bit more on the implications there.
So we'll start with software. So the process that occurs with software is we take the software from the previous year, and then through conversations with the CILs and the school technology committee and the library media specialists, go through and look at the software that is in use, what will continue to be in use, and what is reduced. That's done in a couple of different ways, both from the feedback from those people in terms of verbal feedback. It's also done through an evaluation of the amount of usage that programs get through access through a program called ClassLink, which tracks that usage for many programs, and for contacting the companies and asking them how much usage. So moving into the original proposal, we had already had a set of programs removed from the list. There were things like Discover Video, Discovery Education, our current website system, because we know we're moving to a less expensive website system. So those kind of things were actually already taken out. Then, of course, new additions get added. So the software portion of this is reflective of the removal of the new additions. So that would be programs that had not previously been in use in the district before this year, if it was being piloted, which is the example of Newsella at the middle school that was funded by the PTO for the first year, or programs proposed for either upgrade or renewal next year that could either be deferred or the same method of functioning could be used for another year. So in that example, one of the things was the frontline electronic onboarding, which would have been in use by the HR department to create an electronic onboarding and staff management process. So we haven't had that in the past. They have a functional paper system, and no, Lewis didn't just cough just at the moment I said that.
Coffee with the sorry.
But they have a functional system that they're using now, so then that system would continue in the way they have it. In terms of on the instructional side, the two major items there are Mystery Science and Newsella. So that would be the pilot program for Newsella this year would come to an end, or we would have to find an alternate funding source.
Dan, do you think the PTO would be supportive of doing another year if they did it the first time? How expensive is it?
I can't speak for them. They were very supportive this year. It was a grant up to $5,200. The teachers feel very strongly that this is a very important piece of software, especially in English and in social studies.
This was
Newsella. The teachers really are very supportive of this.
So it's $5,200 is what we're talking about?
That's what it was
That's
for this year.
Newsella.
That's what it was for this year. I didn't look into next year.
And what's the other one? Mystery Science is what?
Mystery
dollar figure?
Science.
Which,
It is $1,998.
1,000?
$998.
So of all the, technology reductions that we were talking about in software, these are the only two academic ones, and they amount to about $7,000.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
What is that program?
That's our science program, for, especially for third
The
grade.
new one that
Chemistry,
we just rolled out.
science, yeah, part of, I'm doing training on it actually right now today in their PD.
I heard all about science.
What's the rest of the $241,000?
Okay, so, the bulk of that actually comes from hardware modifications.
Software. Oh,
Yeah, so that was the,
hardware, yeah,
that
okay.
was, so now we're doing equipment, the equipment side. So the
Sorry,
first,
before you go on, what's
Sure.
the rest of the, just to give me a dollar figure to break down, so not the instructional, New Zealot and Mystery Science, but the other software reductions total what?
so, the frontline onboarding is 13,594.
Just a total number, 26, is it?
Yeah, I think it's 33 minus 7. 33,000 in software minus 7,000 for the educational.
Yeah, it should be 32,317.58.
Minus the instructional,
Right.
so 26-ish. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then the next piece would be the equipment side. So in the equipment, the first items would be the iPad refresh that was slotted for the WIS, middle school and high school libraries. What that would do is just, it would be a deferment, so you have existing iPads there now. Those iPads date back to 2013, so they're about 7 years old. So they would be replaced in order to keep up with the current apps and current operating system. So instead of doing that, the existing ones would remain in place, and then they would be deferred to a future year. The next was a hardware request that was from the high school in terms of the implementation of Chromebooks. This came actually from the high school's technology committee, asking that Chromebooks be allocated to give what would amount to the equivalent of 2 per classroom, in an effort to supplement for students who either don't bring a device, because as you know, the high school is a bring your own device program. They would either be for students who don't bring a device or who bring a device that then has an issue, so that the teacher would have an immediate ability to have all the students have something in front of them. So that would be reducing those Chromebooks, because it was a new request, something we haven't had in the past. So functionally, we would just remain with what we are doing now, with a bring your own device program. Students that don't have devices right now would go to the library, and then they have an internal process for checking out devices to those students and then having them returned throughout the day.
Is there any program for students on financial assistance of any kind where they would get, if they couldn't have their own device, other than these 2 in the classroom?
So that has been done on a basis that is specific basis with those families, and that usually goes through Lisa's office.
Okay.
How much is the iPad refresh?
It's $7,475 per school.
So that's times 4 or times 3?
Times 3.
Okay.
And the Chromebooks in the high school, 2 per classroom?
That was, in total, it's $28,500.
Okay, keep going, there's more in the equipment, right?
Yes, yeah, oh yeah. Okay, so the next set of items would be those that come from a request from the art department at the high school. So that is for Wacom tablets and a tabloid size flatbed scanner. That would be, a total is 1,520, and they would be for, they would continue the process they have now. So it was a classroom enhancement. They have a method that they can use now. They can do scanning on photocopiers, for example. It would just be that they couldn't do it in the classroom, so they'd have to leave the room and arrange time. But they would function in that way. Next is an Apple iMac, that was a request from the Weston High School auditorium program, or theater program, don't ask me why I said it that way. And that's $1,499, that's replacing the iMac that currently controls the projector and the electronics in the control room.
I guess the
So
question
that would
really.
remain the
Let's get
same.
to the big bulk.
Yeah, well, no, I guess the question really is, what is ultimately, you know, as it relates to the students, what is it here that is
A need to
ultimately
have
a
or
really
Critical.
necessity that we're getting rid of?
In your opinion?
Yeah.
Well, so there's more than my opinion that matters for some of these, because when the requests are coming in from art or the teachers at the high school and so forth, that their opinions are going to differ than mine being
Sure.
in my role. So other things that we haven't gotten to, you have the reduction of staff laptops. That actually reduces the request down to only having 5 staff laptops. Those, while that is a staff, you know, it's a staff device, but that will have impact on how instruction is delivered, because we have aging devices that are already failing, that teachers struggle with in terms of being able to have them display the videos, have them run the software, have them connect to the smart boards. So I think that while we can always defer, and optimally the original request would have been 159 devices, we actually presented in the original budget 59 devices. So we had actually evaluated and spread out how we could do that. And then what remains after the reduction on this sheet is 5.
So can we?
5 sounds like too little.
Yeah, first of all, I don't think we can spend that much time on all,
I agree.
I think at the end of the day, this is probably a category that has to stay on this list and revisit it. It's not something, I mean, when you prioritize against a lot of the other categories on here, I mean, it's.
But in broad terms, generally, like from what I'm hearing, you know, I wouldn't touch mystery science or Nizar. Those are 2 low ticket items that are used by students on their computers. Teachers in the middle of professional development on one of them today. Like, those are the closest to the students. You know, so there's something where when we do get a chance to dive in between now and tomorrow night, you know, we make those decisions. But I agree, we can't go through it at this granular detail, but this is helpful, and
Yeah,
we should have
the
had.
one caution is you're gonna run into that in almost every section here, because we're flatlined. What we did, with the reduction request, we started flatline, so that those 2 are flatline.
But also understand, Bill, that this is the kind of detail that we absolutely needed and need in order to make informed decisions as board members, because otherwise you know, it's very, very hard for us to look at a big bulk number and.
Right, I'm saying, so we have always brought the detail, that's why Craig's senior role, you know, the process, every year since I've been here is, we bring the detail, at sometimes front end when asked, so yes, you need the detail. All I'm cautioning is, at the level of 4 figures, when we're facing we're facing a $3 million problem. And all I'm saying is, hopefully you're hearing, this group here went through every single one of these line items down to the hundreds of dollars to sort out what can we flatline, what can't we?
I think
So that's fine. You know, we will share the detail. I'm just cautioning you, you know, $8,000 here, you're gonna see that across other areas. Again.
I think we have to rely on the, you know, the experts in our field. So, I mean, Craig, what you've said has been incredibly helpful. I hope you heard what we said and the feedback we're giving, and then we'll raise hats.
Very helpful.
The media
Can I just add 2 things real quick? Just so everyone's aware, in addition to software and technology, there is actually also contracted services in that number, and there's also copier contract in that number. So a renegotiation of the copier contract should reduce about $12,000 of copier costs. And there's also a $20,000 reduction in contracted services. So it's all lumped together there, but it does eventually would spread out over multiple accounts.
Yeah. The next item is one that I really want to hear about, which is the library media specialist. That one is that one seems like a much bigger deal.
If I can begin and then ask the principals to talk a little
Yeah.
bit. So one of the unfortunate things that happen with library media specialists is their title. So in the state of Connecticut, if you work inside the library, you have a certification called the Library Media Specialist Certification. But 5 years ago, we made a conscious decision here in Weston to change from a library to a learning commons. And we did that across the board in all of our schools. And that included the restructuring and rebuilding of furniture. It included the infusion of technology. It included having librarians not stay in the library, but go to the classroom. So in a learning commons model, what you want is students to not come in and consume, which is what all of us did when we would go to the library. We'd go in, we'd take a book, we'd take it off the shelf, and we'd go home and we'd read it with our parents. What you want them to do is you want them to create, and you want them to be manufacturers of their learning. And to do that, we went through and we changed our space. So, you know, WIS and the middle school being prime examples of how the shelving has been repositioned. The high school and the fact that we've taken all the high shelves that used to be in that room out. So while we call them library media specialists, they're not librarians.
Okay, that's great.
What they do is interact with the technology. So in the reductions of the tech integrators over the past 3 years, the bulk of that teacher coaching went to your library media specialists, because that's who's partnered now with the teachers to do the tech integrating. So the other piece you have is they not only are doing the technology, but they also have instruction of their own that they infuse, and that happens to that partnership. So library skills, so the basic library skills of, you know, research, how to determine fake news, more modern stuff which we refer to as like the ISTE standards for students, the International Society on Technology and Education standards for students. Those occur through the partnership between the library media specialists and the teachers. So this reduction has a really rolling effect and direct effect on how we're going to be able to interact with students in the future.
And when
Is
you're
this
done,
the person that when you walk into your libraries, and like I know back when I volunteered in your library, they did a project with the green screens and all that. The person that runs that, is that the library media specialist?
Yes. In other terms, these are in old-fashioned language, these are the librarians. And when you want, we have the material, the rolling cutbacks have been going on the last couple of years. In the last couple of years, we've cut out the elimination of tech integrators, and we've cut out the library learning commons technology specialists. So this is an additional layering of cuts. So we've been cutting back so that innovation Craig talked about, since putting that in for budgetary reasons, we've been pulling back on that. And this would be yet another big pullback. This would be the harshest.
Yeah.
And I think it's just helpful in plain English. Old-fashioned librarians, which matter in a different title, this would be having that workforce, cutting it right in half. Is that correct?
So if you didn't have the two, what would you do?
Well,
I can start.
start now.
We would simply just not be able to have the services that we have now for students and for teachers. The library media specialists, our library media center is the heart and center of our school, and this is the person that makes it so vibrant. Everything that Craig talked about, the instruction, the resources, the tools, the interface, the daily contact with students would not be.
How many media specialists do you have?
One in my school.
And how many other people work in the library or
I
FTEs in the
also
library?
have a library para to assist.
So there's one library media specialist and one para in each of the schools.
Except the high school has somebody who's an hour and a half to extend the hours of the library, but that's a minor FTE.
So I think that, you know, one of the things that has kind of been thematic in this budget season, just in terms of having an overarching context and story behind some of these shifts and cuts. And what I was hoping to see was that with this elimination as well, so you would go from 4 to 2, correct? Just correct me if I'm wrong here. And then is the strategy, the remaining 2 split their time
Yes,
then?
or schools
So
down to
0.5, 0.5, okay. So when you're talking about impact, then you're saying the impact then is that only half of the day, you will only have this person then half the day and not full day. But potentially, I'm just thinking out loud here.
You're not losing them entirely,
You're not losing them entirely. And a
Which is not
child
ideal.
could still be exposed to this person on a weekly basis if we marry it up correctly, that that person is in the building for half the week. I'm just thinking out loud
Well,
here.
with halftime, I don't know that we would have weekly contact. I think the integration and the work that, you know, I can speak to her on that, but the integration and the work that's done for the classroom instruction is enormous. I mean, she is more often out in the classrooms, collaborating with teachers, creating, you know, supplementing what they're learning in the classroom,
Yeah.
bringing it to life through the use of technology, school-wide events and activities. They're very heavily involved in our One School One Book program, our family fun night.
Was the,
You know, and you cut somebody in half and you've got travel time, you know, it's the person.
what was the
who's there
thinking
2 days a
around
week and
2 versus 1, or versus 3? I mean, why 2? Like, what was the thinking around 2? What was magical about the number of cutting 2?
I mean,
Was it
it's,
just to get to a meaningful number?
I mean, all of this is driven by getting to a meaningful number. I mean, again, there's,
$3 million, right?
yeah, I mean, it's simply, you've gotta cut 3 million, and then where do you find it, and you've got 4 buildings, so there's some balance and shared across, but it would have severe implications on the building of literacy, the integration of technology.
No, that's not what I'm getting at. I'm getting at, so there's a, so you could have cut 1 and then cut something else. That's what I'm saying. Why 2? I mean,
What do you mean?
It's an equity issue in my mind.
yeah, it's an equity, yeah, I was
So
just
the
wondering why
2
the number 2.
provides a half per building.
3 would have been a bigger number.
You're absolutely right. I think it was something also that we had discussed a couple of years ago,
Right.
that was rejected, simply because it's not,
Yeah.
well, for the reasons we're discussing here.
Yeah.
So is it a magic number? No, I think
Yeah.
it's an equal number.
Yeah.
It's an attempt to, it's a full certified FTE, so it's a way to get the $3 million, but yes, you could do 3, the board could cut 1, and we would use the extra resource just to provide a little more time in each school.
So in my school, it will eliminate the major tech program. There's no way that she'll be able to do that, because in this budget, I cut the 0.5 computer person, because the librarian was gonna pick up all of that. She's the one that introduces all of our students to the one-on-one Chromebooks. She's the one who does all the Intertech classes. I'll just have to eliminate that program completely and go back to health full-time. So
For the middle
because-
school as well, this is,
So-
the whole rollout of the Chromebook program, the whole monitoring of the Chromebook program, all the education is done by our library media specialists. I can't imagine not having a full-time media specialist, library media specialist in middle school.
One thing I would add, at the high school level, is we're a little bit different in that we have kids coming and going the entire time in the library. They don't come in as a class necessarily. They're just, it's always full of people. And so it might not be as, it's just different than the other buildings. And the librarian, oftentimes when you go in there, isn't there because she's in the 10th grade social studies history class, modern world studies, presenting, something in the class or in the classroom, in the library. So if, you think about doing this, and you think, well, who's gonna be in the high school library? Because she also fills in. We have 1 library para. When I first came here, over the years, that's been reduced and reduced. Now we have a lady like, Lewis says, she comes for an hour and a half just to keep the place open till 4, and we have to ask kids to leave, so it's a challenge.
IT coordinator.
So the IT coordinator position is a day-to-day operations position that works with the technicians in supporting the hardware, software, and so forth within the schools. So, an overview of what a day looks like, over the span of 5 days, a half a day is spent in each school working on the technology with the technician. The rest of his time is on system-wide. So it would be the maintenance of our firewall and web filters, maintenance of like the GoGuardian program, that monitors the Chromebooks. So it's a dual-piece role where some of it is system-wide. Also, with the reduction of the administrative assistant for technology last year, they also became the purchasing agent for the department. So the purchasing all goes through this role who initiates the multiple quotes, the requisition process, and so forth. And then interfaces with finance in terms of getting bills paid.
How would you rework the existing staff if you didn't have this position?
So the likelihood would be, right now, the .2 that we spend at the police department, we would pull back on. So that would be, and then redistribute purchasing to the technicians. And then the higher end work would be a combination of work that would come up and be done by me or my role, as well as we would look to shift some of that work to our existing contract with Novus.
Great. Does the police department pay for that .2?
Yes, so there would be an offset in revenue if we pull back that .2, and I'd have to work that out with Phil, because there is something in revenue that reflects that some of that time.
Correct.
Yeah, this is a fully 131, that's there, is that fully loaded?
Yes, that's what benefits.
Tony, how do you wanna do this? Do you want kind of our opinions as we go through this in terms of support, not support, or do we just wanna go through the list?
Yeah, if there's
Finding
something that you,
myself writing like
if you
yes,
have
no,
a,
yes,
if
no.
you have a violent, reaction to any line, please, please speak up. I personally, I think we really have to look hard at the media specialists. I think that there's an impact there that we really need to think hard about whether we wanna do that.
I agree.
Okay, that's, you know, so it's not an area that I'd like to take off the list, but I think we have to have, you know, personally, I think there needs to be,
Full disclosure, I have a no in the margin on that one.
I'm not convinced there on that one,
Agreed.
but let's just go down the list. Central office support position.
Okay. So, we have remaining 3 positions that are true administrative assistant positions, although they all do very different things. Then we also have included we have not identified the position, there's also the office manager for finance operations, and then the HR specialist, Jen, who works with me. So they're all lumped in here, but ultimately, assuming we could figure this out later, that it would be one of these positions, and we would need to then we'd have to start spreading the work around. Can be done. There is a risk, depending on the time of year, to what's going on, FOIA requests in particular, of overtime. Anytime you cut, just true of the maintenance position, which we're coming to as well, anytime you cut positions, you run the risk that in a high volume time that we might need a little more overtime, but certainly not as much as a full cut. I mean, we didn't even calculate that in here. We did calculate in overtime for FOIA requests separately from this, which isn't on this list. So the impact is, you know, we have to make it work. I don't think it's ideal. You know, we cut the IT and admin assistant last year. That work spread to the rest of them, and now if you cut one more, it'll spread to the other.
I see 6 gray positions. You said 5. Am I missing something?
So I got 4 on our side of it.
You said
So,
something like 1,
and
2, 3,
each
4,
position 5. It's 5, right?
I'm not sure what the 6 is.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go to the HR specialist,
Yeah.
administrative assistant, finance and facilities office manager, administrative assistant, district SPED, and administrative assistant, and administrative assistant board clerk. That's
Oh,
six.
you know what, well, so there's the board clerk, but that's the same person as Meredith. There should only be 5, because I've got Jen, I'll just use names, Jen, Meredith, June, Tara, Andrew. Am I missing
No,
somebody?
Jody.
Here.
Jody, that's the district-wide.
That's a district-wide, that's totally different, so that's
So
not
it's
what
on your
we're.
org chart.
Okay, well, that's,
Well,
it's absolutely on the
it's
org chart,
employee.
it's not in this chart. So the
Okay.
org,
Okay.
So
that's a union position that
It
is
should stay
a,
on the org chart.
But it's not as part of this consideration?
no, it can't be.
Okay.
That's a
Okay,
critical.
yeah, that's why I was confused.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, that position is a union position, this idea for a cut is, non-union, non-certified
Okay,
staff.
no, I just saw the 6, that's.
Yeah,
what I
no,
thought.
I'm glad you caught that, that
But
position is separate.
That's the district-wide sped support.
Yeah, just so the board knows, that's a 1.0 where it used to be 1.5.
Yeah, that's.
So that's already reduced.
Yeah, we had reduced last year from a 1.5 to 1.0, that's the 1.0.
That's the 1.0.
And that's a district-wide.
Actually, I think it's 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. That was a move to provide support across all 4 buildings by one person as opposed to one.
Yeah, that person isn't located in the central office, they're located in the buildings, so plus it's not part of this structure. That person will not be involved in this. That position.
Maintenance mechanic?
So right now that position is currently vacant. I think we're in a good position right now with the response staff and monitoring for the guys that we currently have in place. If we do decide to cut this position or to not fill this position, it may call for some maybe additional overtime and also just increase in other small areas. But we think that we're in a position right now, based on our current staff, to be okay without that position.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the quality of the people, the good quality people, in these positions currently. So we're rolling the dice a little bit, but it's, giving me the least worst situation.
Deferring speech therapist, he said we went through that the first, I think we met Mike the first time around, I was part of the first one. That's a deferral, I think we should just move on to, curriculum instruction, the .4, what was?
CIO,
That-
point 4 math, CIO.
Right.
So what happens to that point 4 practically? Is that someone that is now teaching?
That was,
during
that was a
time?
new investment.
That was an
So
ad.
we would go back to our original, our current 5.5 FTE devoted to the CIL program. We'll be coming to that in this document, but it keeps, it's status quo.
It's,
That's the investment of the additional point 4.
And the point 4 was in math?
It was in math at
And it was
Hurlbut.
in math in direct response to, a math course.
Yeah,
actually, let's,
I'm not
Laura,
so
can you
sure
talk about that?
So right now we share, our math and science CIL across Hurlbut and WIS. So we have our CIL for .5, and that's for science and math. So right now our CIL supports math .25, which is a day a week, maybe a little bit more. So it's challenging because,
Because some of the elementary teachers are just not trained specifically in math, right?
I would say most elementary teachers, that wasn't their major in college, most elementary teachers don't come with, degrees in math. It is elementary math, but there's a very high level of training and expertise that they need to have to lay those foundational skills and conceptual understanding at the very beginning, so that at WISP they can build on that. It has been a challenge, to share that across the buildings.
And was that sorry, Terry.
Go ahead.
Was that a reduction from years prior?
No.
No, since I've been here, since
No, that's been stable for a long time.
Yeah, so what typically happens, is, like now when we were in a science renewal, more of Carolyn's time moves into supporting teachers with science, and less is in math. So next year, you know, with the elimination of this, I mean, we're moving back to math, so she would spend more probably of her time in math, less with the science. But, you know, between renewals, what happens is, new teachers come on board.
Right.
Teachers change grade levels.
Teachers, yeah, exactly. So that, you know, that was trying to get at that.
But you have a much bigger, I mean, let's move, I guess this is part of the bigger discussion, which let's maybe move to that one, which is, you know, moving from 5.5 to 4, right, which was part of the second list. Maybe talk about a little that, what
Is
the
that the
thinking was
first
around.
bullet and then first
Yeah,
number 2?
yeah. So maybe we can just move to that for, you know,
Yep.
while we're on the topic.
Sure, and that again was driven by, you know, the ultimate goal of getting to a 0 and looking across all cost centers and areas. And certainly the curriculum instructional model was another area to look from, just like we looked at the library media center specialists. So it's not an elimination of that support, but it is a significant reduction. And what would happen is that particular model would no longer be funded, and a new model would need to be developed and created. And the primary functions of a CIL are curriculum development, instructional coaching, professional development, and then all the managerial tasks. We would have to pick and choose how to focus those responsibilities in another way. Now, as you reduce from 5.5 to 4, we may also in that lose the specialties of particular CILs. So right now we cover each subject area, but what would happen is you might have to have, you know, you might not be looking at the specials support in that area, or you might have one person doing multiple disciplines, but they may not be covering an area that's necessarily their area of expertise. So for example, if someone was covering humanities or someone was covering STEM, naturally, you know, at the secondary level, you have someone who has a science certification versus someone who has a math certification. There might need to be crossover between disciplines.
So it's to be determined then. It was kind of just.
Well,
let's
yeah,
go
so
from 5 to 4 and we'll figure it out.
I don't have a specific
Yeah,
model
so-
for you at this point. I would get some input. We had initial conversations with the principals. We need more conversations. We would need also the SILs. Would be helpful getting some of their thoughts as well.
I mean, what we do know is, I mean, this is a particular area of strategic advantage for Weston, is the SIL approach. And you can look at a lot of very tangible places where this district has done very, very well in supporting teachers and supporting instructions through the SIL approach. In other locations, and we have to talk sometimes about other locations, they have done this collapsing down into a humanities, into a STEM. And the results have been very mixed because of those concerns that Ken has raised, that instead of being an ELA and social studies, you're combined down. Well, most importantly, you're going to the STEM, you're collapsing on the science and math. And so we were trying to bolster math by adding, this would be going further down that path. So, you know, it's happened elsewhere. It's a move of efficiency if you want that, but I think it would have some very direct effects on the quality of instruction and the quality of transition with new curriculum material, new standards, and all the rest. Weston has avoided those problems through this SIL approach, and the internal review several years ago by Medina validated that. So again, this is an area of quite significant effect.
Do we have any feedback from the teachers on how they think the SIL model works?
We have the 2017 report from Noe Medina, where all that is documented through the focus group process.
I mean, our teachers really value we have, primarily we have the 2 curriculum instructional leaders, and I mean, they're working with us. They're used to working with them today. They have them in, co-teaching as the new units are coming in. I just also want to make one little correction. At our school, that extracurricular was not about low test scores. It was really about, because we were eliminating the math enrichment program, it was really helping teachers really be able to provide that extra differentiation for them to provide that enrichment. So giving more
That was a
technicality.
a second,
Right.
Lisa, you were gonna say something?
Sorry.
Yeah, to me, this is, troubling at the high school level to, tweak this kind of, structure, because frankly, it's the instructional leadership team at the high school. So if you are reducing, you know, I sit with a group of people, I'm the assistant principals, and we design professional development, we create school action plans, we also have this portrait of a graduate, the mastery-based diploma assessments that we have to look at, you know, to be compliant with the state of Connecticut. We went, to the workshops in the fall on it. Now I'm gonna be sitting there with half the number of people.
Yeah.
And people that, you know, humanities, you put world language in there, world language is specialized, and these are specialized areas. And you put someone that certified in English to do social studies and
We tried that.
world language.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm not-
frankly, are they even gonna wanna do it? They don't have that level of expertise.
I think to Melissa's question also, the teachers at the middle school highly value their curriculum instructional leaders and the department meeting time.
And I mean, to underscore that, the basic trade-off is typically districts don't have support for teachers as they're required to take on new material. And that is what we have here. Teachers alone, no matter how good they are, they're busy teaching, busy figuring out the lessons that's right in front of them, also then taking on new curriculum material, new standards, requiring new curriculum, requiring new lessons. Even the SIL model at some level isn't enough, but at least that's there to provide that support and guidance for teachers doing critical work. And where this has been halved or taken away in other places, that's where you see major failings in the implementation of standards. The whole Common Core failure in most places is because there was not support for teachers in that massive change. Whether you like the Common Core or not, the evidence-based result is you did not provide support for teachers in that change. Weston totally avoided that entire problem because of the SIL
So
approach.
I think we should move on, but I just wanna say that there is no question that the SILs not only provide us the coaching for the teachers that we understand is critical for them, but also we're grooming a line of leaders
Yes.
for the whole district that grow into, you
Yeah.
know,
I
senior positions.
I don't think you're gonna have support in the board for actually
That's
really
right.
destroying the SIL model. But if there is an opportunity, to trim at the edge, to, you know, and not really, impact it significantly, let's do it, but I don't think anybody's looking for a wholesale reduction, of course, in terms of the SIL model.
No, and look, again, this is only on the list because you had to get to the zero.
Well,
This is a
limited list.
Well, I think it's
No, we were,
significant.
well,
Well, let's move on to the next,
Yeah.
let's move on to the next.
Team leaders. Talk about team leaders.
Do you want me to start?
Sure, I can.
I've done a lot of thinking about this one because, I think my school, maybe more than the others, we have the largest number of teams, we have 2 teams per grade level. I even looked at the union contract, it says as long as we continue to have a team model at the middle school, we have to provide 2 team leaders.
Well,
A team leader per team, that's what that's as I read
That's
it.
not how it works, Jen.
Okay,
We can
all right,
talk
I'm
about that
sorry.
offline in the
So
club
how does it
department.
work?
All right, that's fine, I just was,
You have a right to eliminate any position you like, the problem is then you will not have team leadership. So you can still have a team, what you can't have, and as long as you have 2 teams, you must have 2 team leaders and 1
Right.
team one, but you don't have to have those positions. However, as long as we continue to use team leaders as a position, we must, have 2 at the middle school if there's 2 teams. I know I'm talking in a circle here, but you have a right as a board to eliminate any position you want within reason. The union contract does not require specific positions for specific things. The union may not agree with that, but that's something we would have to wrestle with. But ultimately, the function, any function, there's only certain things you can't not have.
Right, well, how would you have teams?
You have to have a
if you teams?
superintendent
So,
first.
I guess that was my concern, how can we have a teaming model without team leaders? And Drew and I sat and looked at this, there are certain functions that the counselor could take over, there's certain functions that the administration could take over, Drew and I could take over. What we really can't do is just the glue, the culture, the real feeling of a team membership where you have an innovators team and an inventors team. And throughout the year, they do field trips by teams, and they have team identity and team spirit and team t-shirts, and that's one whole part of it in terms of the team focus. I think we still could have a weekly hands-up meeting to talk about student issues by teachers. We still could have parent conferences by team. Or even at
Can we
teams.
think creatively about having high school leadership come down and be team leaders in the middle school?
Oh, no, that would be completely opposite.
Then you have to pay
What
double.
high
the
school
stipend.
leadership?
No,
That's
I'm not
oh,
talking about
no.
teachers, I'm
No,
talking about
this is-
I'm talking about, let's hear me out here. I mean, I agree, if you were to able to, and I'm not advocating for getting rid of team leaders, I'm just saying,
Right.
if we think creatively about, you know, you disseminating some of the roles to you and to Drew and to some of the others, is there any reason why some of the culture stuff you just referred to, as far as, you know, t-shirts and rah-rah and, you know, could be led by high school students?
We would do that with our own students. We would probably use the wingman program or something. We can do the cultural part in the school for the students. I was
Okay.
thinking more of like the staff morale of,
I see.
and in the way
Yeah,
that
no,
Lisa,
that's great.
in the way that Lisa has the CILs really as her leadership team in the high school, even those that are 6-4 and K-12 CILs, that's the leadership structure
Yes.
of the high school. That's not the leadership structure of the middle school.
Yes.
Drew and I meet regularly with our team leaders. That's when we're sitting down with 9 staff members representing the staff, working on school-wide issues
Yeah.
of a variety of ways. So it's that piece of it that would be lost.
Right.
And I would
think
feel
also-
that.
There's an important thing to note about that too, and you know, we've discussed this internally, but when you go down the road, and you can absolutely do it, in my opinion, but it, you know, if it must be done, but when you reassign duties, you then have impact issues, meaning impact bargaining. So let's say the counselors did more of the team leader work. The union would have the right to say, well, now the teachers union, you are now assigning stipended paid work to another bargaining group position. And they would have the right to then bargain over that, and if it was all the same work, it would just be shifting a stipend effectively. If it's reduced work, we could, whatever, we'd have to negotiate. The same is true for the administration, believe it or not us, but the Weston Administrators Association administrators. So if you eliminate the teacher group team leaders, but then ask the assistant principal and the principal to lead those meetings, first of all, I'm sure the union would be not happy, but on top of the teachers union, but on top of that, we would have to then bargain with the administrators union if they asked to discuss, okay, you now have added responsibilities. Administrator union has the right, like any union, to bargain over impact of change in terms of conditions of employment, which includes additional duties. So it doesn't mean we couldn't get a better deal, it doesn't mean, it's just something to be aware of when we're talking about it.
I think the same,
No, I was just gonna say, one thing, you know, when you see team leaders, I just wanna, clarify, so we're talking about grade level team leaders, but we're also talking about the guidance team leader at the high school or not?
No.
No, okay, or the SPED team leader?
Okay, you are talking about the sped numbers are in this.
Sped numbers are not.
Sped numbers are in there.
No, they're not.
They're not.
Oh, they're not in there. Oh, we took them out.
Okay,
Great,
they're not
so
in
that's,
there.
so we separated them.
Okay, I couldn't
Yeah, the
remember,
plan-
For
sorry.
me, it would also be my PFA team leader, who represents the.
So how much is this per school? Is there a way to break that out for us?
Well, then it's,
I have it.
it's nothing at the high school then, because the
Yeah.
only two leader we have
Yeah.
are SPED and guidance, which is Mary Starling.
You guys feel the same way like Dan?
Well, I mean, our team leaders run the grade level meetings, which, you know, we can find that consistency across the grade, it's helping teachers share best practices, look at data, you know.
I don't know if this is on the high
Yeah.
school.
And it's part of my leadership.
No, but I would like to
Yeah.
know what it is per school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's some details attached on the sheet.
But Dan, did you ever look, I asked this question the first time we met about the team leaders in the middle school. Did you ever look into, cause on the budget pages, it looked like it was like an 18% increase?
I think
I think we
Did you
had
guys look
included
into
maybe
that?
I think there's, it's not just one, I think there's an additional, team that included there.
it should be, I don't think included the pupil services one, but I have, I should have 6 6 grade level teams in the PFAs, we should get a total of 7, and it's about 4,000 each, so that number's right, 28,000.
Yeah, and on page 4 or 5 is the detail on Hillary's question.
Are you concerned about the increase?
Oh, I'm sorry, the number
If you
itself
just
is
look at-
right.
Yeah, if you just look at the page 55, Bill, please,
Yeah.
and just look at the.
Yeah, I know what you're
It's
referring
supposed
to.
to stay
Thank you.
flat, it's supposed to eliminate, there is, did you say there's an increase in that line?
If I worked backwards, it looked like it was an 18% increase.
So that's the question.
Yeah, they can get back to
I'll
us.
take a look at it.
I think it's because that's overall stipends, not just team leader stipends? you're looking at?
That is overall, it could be that what's included.
And we have a couple new clubs that, in this year's budget, that we didn't have in previous budgets.
So I guess the question for me is there any increase in the request for team leaders? Or is it flat from
No,
last year?
it's flat,
Yeah.
except for whatever the
Well, yeah,
slight
1%,
increase.
there's
for
a
new
1% increase on the stipend by
Stipend.
contract.
Thank you.
I'll clarify that and let you guys know, give an update for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Let's move down, let's move down this, I think, I'm not sure, I'm not getting,
I think they're critical. I think for unity, I've seen it firsthand at Pearl, but just to have a cohesive grade, understanding, following kind of the same curriculum. You hear so much, well, this teacher's doing this, or this teacher's doing this, and this teacher's focusing on this. Magnify that exponentially if there are no team leaders, right? It keeps everything cohesive for the
so
cohort.
if we move down, security measure of the capital budget, look at it, that's fine, we're gonna put it, it's equipment, right, it's equipment.
Yes.
The consulting, curriculum instruction, now, just a general area of consulting, when you add up all consulting services, it's like 200 and some odd $1,000. I know there's a lot in that line. Is there any way we can go to a much lower consulting line, but an appropriation model, meaning that based on affordability, basically, that we, so if we want to spend some money on consulting, right, we basically have sort of a Board of Ed committee appropriation, sort of saying, okay, we want X amount of money for consulting, can we afford it, can we take it from other places? Meaning moving kind of, having a lower number, a much lower number, but maybe going to more of an appropriation model based on affordability as the year goes on.
Pool, we can look at it.
Well, why don't we explain what's in that consulting number?
Yeah.
Because this district's actually, consulting often is an easy grab, but this is not an easy grab. This is substantive work. For example, of that total, a significant share is for our long-term relationship with Teachers College, which is correct, this is in there, which is fundamental, a multi-year project, not project's the wrong word, multi-year initiative to bolster our teaching and learning, and that can be spoken to. So I think if we first, for the board, break out what's inside that number, it's not bringing in, particular individuals to do work we could do. It's really hardcore supplemental work. It used to be, but we really tied it down.
No,
So I don't know if we could just explain that, because, for example, if a major chunk of it is things like the Teachers College relationship, that's a multi-year commitment. You don't want to sort of be there, and it's quick, so I just want to help you understand as a board what's inside that.
Absolutely, but I think that, let's understand what's inside that, and let's see if we can budget for what is known and.
Well, that's what we've been doing, so
and then look at the things that maybe are things that we can actually say, as we go in the year, can we do it on an appropriation basis?
No, I hear you, but
Yeah.
I'd rather have it be evidence-based, which is what really is going on in that number.
Okay.
So if we could, because it's natural for the community, it's natural for a board to say consulting, let's get rid of that or cut it back. And if I'm at page 108, am I in the right place, Ken?
Correct,
Yeah,
so.
so could you just break it down,
Yeah,
so people
sure.
know exactly what's going
So
on?
one line here, is 50,940, which was, in the first level of reduction already reduced, I think, by, about $10,000. It was a 20% reduction, and then this is an additional $20,000. So this would cut this line to $20,000, and the reduction would be of the K-8 literacy training, in terms of providing reading and writing support throughout the district. you know, I will say overall with that consulting number, our SILs really provide an efficiency to keeping that number down, because we really don't bring in a lot of outside
Right, it's a
people.
train the trainer model.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Right, so that's one place, so
Can I
that's,
can I ask a question on that?
well, yeah, go ahead.
So on the literacy training, you're taking off $20,000, but it's $32,000.
No, they're taking off 32 and leaving 20.
I'm taking, well, there was an additional 10 that was taken off previously in the 5.5 to 2.89
Oh, I see, okay. So now what is the number?
It's about $20,000.
Is your request?
Yes.
Okay.
If you're reducing it by 30. Yeah, I think, I just wanna give some context around this, not context, some historical, cause when you say consultants, right, in general, it's a discretionary fund to some degree, consultants, it's using outside help.
Well, that's what we're trying to clarify, because
Right,
it's not
so
necessarily discretionary.
in fiscal 19, in this area, we were spending $142,000. This year, we're spending $257,000. We're almost doubling that number, coupled with the fact that you're now asking for an additional 10% increase to take it to $182,000. 282, right, so you're going from 142 in 2019 to a request of 282 in this year.
That's not
But I think we need to
curricular.
break it out for you.
Yeah,
so-
just break it out,
Yeah,
because it's
because
doubling in
It's
2
not in
years.
curriculum review, so we'll have to.
Yeah,
look
No,
at
I'm looking at the
Page 13.
total, yes, I'm looking at the total consultant for the district.
Yeah, it probably includes Gallagher.
It all depends.
So,
I mean,
it's,
fortunately.
you know, this is
There's a lot of
where you wanna gain confidence that there is a discipline around spending money wisely.
Yeah, well,
Right.
yeah,
And
so
so
I,
when you look at the trend and saying, okay, is there a discipline to spend money wisely, and you're looking at something of 142,000 to now going to 282,
Did a little historical
so let me,
perspective.
if I may,
Sorry.
yeah, no, there's a lot of discipline, and what we will answer for you tomorrow is we'll take that number and break it down in great detail. So for example, in 108, we're breaking that number down for you, and there's incredible discipline there, because if you had been even with reduction, that's all tied to teaching and learning and helping us get advantages for our students. So I think that total number on that page, we will look at it and we'll bring it back to you in incredible detail. And because there's not a number in here that hasn't been scrubbed and looked at in great detail, so we will bring that back, but go ahead, please.
I was gonna say, is before the last 4 years, this district frequently would spend large sums of money on consultants without appropriations, without board approval, just doing it on a phone call. That doesn't happen anymore. It hasn't happened for years, the last 4 years or so. So, I know it looks like a big number, and I'm not in command in my mind of all these details, but we don't do that
No,
anymore.
but I mean, these are the exact questions we expect and we're used to, which is to say, you look at a significant line item at a nearly 10% increase, what's in there? So we will come back to you and say, this is very precisely what's in there.
If I may,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
3 areas really, when we're looking in that line for consulting.
What?
There's 3 main categories. SPED, it's curriculum, and it's also technology. Those are really the main drivers of what we have that makes up that large number. So it's not all curriculum, those are the main drivers.
So are you
SPED.
able to break those 3 down
All these,
roughly for us?
all these details are included in the budget book. I mean,
Okay.
all the individual tabs, but I can compile something and I'll blast it out to you guys.
Yeah, and I had my comment was a little bit less about breaking it out, but more about what we do about it, meaning,
Okay.
you know, this is the one area, especially looking at areas that are not necessarily FTE heavy, and if we can save an FTE by maybe thinking a little bit about how to do some of this stuff, it's just worth the thought, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
well, no, but Tony, I'm endorsing the board's rigor here, but I don't want the board to back into decisions that are unfortunate. So if a big chunk of this is sped and it's tied to IEPs and individual struct relationships, that's that piece.
Yeah, let's not speculate. Let's just.
That's what I'm saying. So then on the curricular piece, you wanna dig into that to understand, and then on the tech piece, so break it down, then use a board clearly see
Yeah.
what's it comprised of.
Absolutely.
Naturally, the community's asking about it, any smart community board sees consulting, and that might be an easy cut, but we've scrubbed it, so we will bring you those numbers. Phil can get you, as you said, tonight, or we'll bring it in tomorrow, so you have it, so you know exactly
Phil, what would
in
be
that
really helpful-
221 line, what's inside that.
Yeah, and what would be really helpful is to just have it, and really simple, 6 lines, have it broken down by those 3 categories that you just said. And also, the increase from 2018 to now, just that's.
Fiscal 19, yeah.
Fiscal 19 to now, so spend has, you know, because as Ruby says, you know, the increase is significant, where does most of that increase lie?
Right.
That's what we're getting at.
That's fine with you.
There's a theme of, curriculum instructional leaders, consulting, team leaders that I see as areas where, we're not sure what's in it. So I think, you know, it seems like that's where, we wanna make sure, you know, that we're not on the,
But team
Number
leaders and
one.
CILs are pretty clear, right?
Yeah.
It's just
well,
recycling,
it just
but-
seems like there's,
It's
a lot of
separate.
management and support, and we wanna make sure that they're all being used efficiently. It's like, that's how I see it, okay?
But you know what the numbers are, for the.
We know what the numbers
For the
are,
team
yes.
leaders and CILs, we can attach actual FTE or
Yeah,
stipends to.
let's
full-time.
just
Okay, I just wanna make sure that's
Uh,
not what you're looking at, 'cause that's easier.
district admin legal fees, that's another one, Louis, when you look out next year, right?
Yeah.
You know, how much risk can we take on this line?
Well, I have some ideas, but it's not really ready for prime time.
Okay.
Which is part of the reason it's $20,000. Yeah, I'm just being honest.
It's all right, we're getting close.
Why the
Getting close to
20,000?
prime time, though.
Yeah, but we're looking at-
We're about to air any second now.
I know, but it would be tomorrow, again, not ready for prime time. But, if I'm not mistaken, this 20,000 get us to a flat year over year. correct?
No,
No,
50.
it should be.
Oh, is this the original
just
plan?
like-
You need
we're-
50.
We're at 50.
That was
because-
10?
Yeah, something,
Okay. So,
like that.
Like 30.
it's really hard to tell. As I
Yeah.
think I explained,
Yeah.
this is an unusual year. I cannot imagine, well, I can imagine, but I can't, I'm hoping that next year will not be like this year. In which case, then you would have a reduced, use of outside counsel, and we, at the very least, can hold steady. One of the big issues this year was we had 2 collective bargainings that were conducted by your outside counsel. One is because the teachers and the board has always used outside counsel for that, the other administrators, because of my conflict of interest on that, basically my salary, the increase is tied. So those won't happen again. But looking at all the stuff we're facing, I'm really uncomfortable not at least budgeting the same amount of money. There is a chance, depending on whether my idea is ready for prime time or not, that maybe we can pull even that back a little, but I don't know for a budgeting reason, whether that might be something we have to revisit after the board meeting.
And I'm sure that this has already been considered, but just having spent most of my professional career working in large law firms,
Yep.
I have to emphasize the point that there are plenty of quality associates
Yes.
that can do the work of the named partner, and anything that they're doing, if we're the client, is going to Tom or whoever our named partner is.
There's
Jessica,
reasons for
the
that, which we had
associates.
discussed in executive session, so I'm not really comfortable
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about here, but the principle of what you're saying, I understand it, and I think well, you weren't in that
They
meeting.
will review,
Yeah,
all the
okay.
ones
That's right, we
that
did
I
discuss
was
that,
working.
but yeah, good to highlight.
I hear the point, and I've always myself thought about that, I'm aware of it.
Partner sees everything that goes on.
You're right, part of the problem is, there's something, well, this isn't like litigation, in the sense that our outside firm doesn't do litigation for us. That
Yes.
most of the litigation we've had, other than, even that one, it's all been handled by your insurance counsel. So you have a small deductible, it's not an issue. So really, when we use outside counsel, it has to do with either bargaining issues or, issues where there's a conflict on my part, which I just have to recuse myself.
Circle back with you on the
Yeah.
exact session that I missed.
Happy to, of course. The other reason is some of this stuff is, I mean, we have our counsel, our attorney, primary partner, is the premier education lawyer in the state, if not much of the country. So, his input is invaluable and has kept us out of much trouble over the years. So, so can I finish? Thank you, I'm sorry. But there are things FOIA, for instance, where I need, quick answers on smaller issues. And I will say that this year, our attorneys have been better about getting that research by the people you're describing. So I'm also pushing for that. I also understand that, and we can, that's part of the solution.
I mean, because there are, as Melissa, as you know, there are trade-offs here. The advantage of, Tom Mooney or Jessica is that they can move really fast on particular questions that might take someone more junior longer.
Oh, it's a quick.
And we, through an RFQ, we did change our legal representation in the PBS, SPED area, and that's played to our advantage. So that, so these are all good questions. I think if you're all this was covered in the executive
Melissa
session.
and I can talk over
Yeah.
offline if the board's comfortable with
The
that.
deferring of the 6-12 guidance counselor. Someone talk through that?
Oh, Lisa deputized me to talk about
Yeah,
that.
but that's the
Of course she left.
6 part.
This was an investment. This was something that we don't currently have, but we thought would allow us to really be stronger, especially in that transition from middle school to high school and really start in middle school. But she, obviously we can live without it. What we can't live without, she said, is the position that Mary currently has at the high school in terms of, heading up the guidance there and having the team leader for
Yeah, that's not on the
community
list.
services, so.
Yeah, we haven't even.
So
that's
if it's
nowhere.
just the investment, it's
It's just the
continued on as we have.
I think she mentioned also there was an accountability piece here by right, Bill, correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong?
I mean, Mike's in a mediation, just so you know where he is, that he had to be there for, and this is a Mike, Lisa working on this, that it's providing, it would be moving the existing line, not an FTE increase, but moving into a 0.6, 0.4, 0.6 administrator, allowing for, more oversight. It's a great department doing excellent work, but this is, in this district at this point, as a college preparatory district, this is the ultimate outcome. And it's providing then a 6-12 connecting piece, which we've not had, to bring more coherence and cohesion in where it's a very good team, middle school and high school, the counseling team, and it also reaches beyond just the college counseling piece for sure. But it's an investment. It's something we knew going in may not hold this year, maybe a deferral. There's large upside to it, but again, it's one of those to get to the.
No, and from the climate study that we just saw on Monday, it seemed like the students' happiness level at those transition years was pretty high, right?
That was actually a surprise. It was nice news to see. I mean, it's a very strong survey and all for the district. I mean, as Mike expressed to you as a board, there's a lot of great news for Weston in that survey on a lot of very critical issues. I think that, the connections there can be stronger. I think particularly in the support, we'd be better to make this investment, but again, in a lean, tight year, it may be something you can't do. We advise a particular individual would have to apply for the job, even though it's their job, that this may not work, so they were ready for it not to work. But we'll see.
So now, we already talked about the SIL model. Now we're going into a list of programs. Maybe I could ask some of the board members in terms of program impacts. You want to just start at the top, or is there any place, I'm just cognizant of hitting the ones that are
I said
standing
no
out?
to so many.
Yeah, okay, well, let's start from the top with the double block of English language
So,
arts and Cisco.
actually, I've done a lot of thinking about this and, communicate with Christine, as well. This may be an opportunity for us. Kim and I have been talking for years, what could we do with the middle school schedule? How could we make it work? We may be able to get some things out of this that would actually strengthen our teaming model and allow us to have extended blocks during the day.
I'm sorry, I don't have children in middle school
So-
yet. Can you, I was reading number 7 to try to understand the day that a child goes through it in middle school. So can you say that currently the students have one 43-minute period of reading and one 43 minute period of
I have-
writing each day?
I have a couple of our schedules that might help you, if you look at what our
Oh,
schedule looks
okay,
like.
okay.
I think I still have some, I wanna save at least one to read off of, but actually. So, there's 5 academic periods during the day at the middle school. So if you looked at the far left column, that would give you an example. And basically, I'll try to be as brief as I can. This is what it could look like for next year with 3 academics in a row, first 3 periods, and then the last 2 periods are academic. So right now, if we do the current model, 2 of those 5 would be English. 1 would be reading and 1 would be writing.
Okay.
And then they'd have math, science, and social studies
Okay.
every day. What we could possibly do is have, instead of having 5 academic periods, it's really 4 academic classes. It's English, math, science, and social studies.
But in English is writing and reading.
It's writing and reading.
And
So-
you're just elongating those,
So what we
correct?
could do, no, we'd actually rotate it, because I haven't had so many teachers, and the teachers have to be able to see all of their classes. But you could have a rotating schedule where the last block of the day, could be a double block. And it would be English, for the students one day, and science one day, it'd be reading one day, or science, math, social studies, and English. It actually, it could actually provide an opportunity for teachers to see kids at different times during the day as they rotate through. We haven't done a rotating schedule before. Whatever they end with at the end of the day, that's what they start with the next day. It doesn't show that here because I haven't shown the rotation on here. This just shows you the 5.
Would this affect the
Shares that we
PFA?
do. If we left the PFA kind of,
Period, you know what I'm talking
we
about?
would maybe change it a little bit, but we would keep that.
The extended learning.
Yeah, cause I
One of
hear
the-
great things.
One
about
of the
that.
possible strengths of, and this is just, we've been working, and this is a changing thing every day. Teachers have to teach 5 classes, and there's certain other contractual requirements that we have to follow.
There's many.
Many,
very
about,
detailed-
they have to have 300 minutes of prep time, they can't have more than 100
Right.
supervisory
I'll
minutes,
give
those
them a
types of
memo,
things.
give you guys a memo about that.
But I think I can get that to work and still have during that ELT block, we might even be able to not only do some of our SRBI interventions, but also maybe even some enrichment, or we can assign teachers to teach during that time, if they're only doing 4 classes. Because we have 8 sections in 6th grade. This will only work in 6th grade with 8 sections. And with 4 academic blocks. When they get to 7th and 8th grade, there's 5 academic blocks because world language becomes an academic block, so I could not use this model at that time.
Right.
We had thought of other things, but that would be going the
No, I
wrong
like the
direction.
creative, yeah,
if you-
Dan, I really
thinking.
appreciate the creative reimagining.
If I could share just a couple things too when you're done.
The only question I had was, so overall time versus a 6th grader this year versus a 6th grader next year,
Academic time is the same.
how about reading and
Reading,
writing
they
time?
do.
Even all evens out?
No,
No.
they're gonna get less, because right now they're getting double every day.
This
They're
year
gonna
they're
get
getting
double every 4th day. So there is a decrease
Right.
in minutes.
In reading and
But
writing.
not necessarily, I mean, that doesn't necessarily translate to outcomes.
And some of the positives, I think, would be, you no longer have, shared classes. Teachers have only their own kids. Right now, on each team, there's a shared English class, where they have one teacher for reading and one teacher for writing. So that's why I thought it could possibly strengthen the teaming model in a way also.
We also have Christine Cicada and Alex Bluestein here for questions, but I would just also share the other side of the coin of this as well. So in our transition from 5th to 6th grade, we have the same model currently, so that the teacher has that double block to fully implement Readers Writers Workshop in the way it's intended, to be able to confer, to be able to spend that individual time with students. Teachers would have more students in this model. So currently, when they're teaching double blocks, they really have the equivalent of 2.5 groups of students. They have about 50 to 60 students. This model would be closer, we raise the number of students, but what they're doing is they're giving more feedback under the Readers Writers Workshop model. It would be less time to focus on those outcomes and standards. And one of the the impact would be, teachers currently in 6th grade, as you make decisions to move people into other roles, we'd have to shift to potentially down to the elementary school where they're teaching elementary, and so we would have to also think about how do you train those people in the programs they haven't taught for, while just thinking about people's certifications, where they would go. So there are other considerations as well, just giving you more of a full picture. We also have Christine and Alex here if you have questions.
How is the just real quick. How is the writing requirement for the kids in high school? Is there one in middle school
We
too?
have an 8th grade writing portfolio.
How is that, how are the students doing it?
Do you wanna, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear
Because
from you.
I'm concerned about the loss of time for such a core subject at an age where I think, the writing skills going into the high school are really important.
Right, and I appreciate that. So when we're talking about the double block, we already have a single block in 7th and 8th grade for ELA. So it just would be the shift in 6th grade. And I would say a lot of the work that we're doing in 6th grade is along the same with the Readers Writers Workshop program that we're doing K through 5. So it's a lot of the foundational skills and strengthening their skills and their confidence as readers and writers in that program. Once they get into 7th grade, it's more aligned with the way we're teaching at the high school, right? Because we only have that single block and we see them that once a day. So the reading and the writing is combined more naturally in those classes. Not that it's unnatural, but the work we're doing in 7th and 8th grade is building towards that 8th grade portfolio. So we're using all those skills K through 6, and then we're starting to work with them on a school-wide rubric, a similar, but a different set of standards for the students. And so they know what they're working towards. I'll tell you the truth, in their 8th grade portfolios, it's mainly work from late 7th grade and 8th grade. So yeah, they're not losing what came before them, but they are focusing on where they are at that moment, that snapshot of where they are. And then we're using that information to inform what's going on in the high school.
Would you be concerned about the loss of time, for the 6th graders?
I mean, I can't actually answer that. I don't think so. I'm actually interested in having this rotating schedule because I think it could work really well because, especially if we still have the support that we've been talking about outside the classroom, I think we could make this work, and I think it can work well, especially knowing that every 4th day they have that double block.
I'll just add, there's some differing opinions. I don't agree. I think this double block is critical. If you look at the issues we have in terms of some of the performance in 6th grade on the Smarter Balance, I think that having a double block in that transition, using the current elementary model is critical. And I respectfully, I respect all opinions here, but I will have to say that I can see when we've gone down to the elementary, the 5th grade level, to have 6th grade teachers observe how that time, is used and have taken some of that back. This would be a different approach. It's certainly, in some schools they use a single block approach, but it would have an impact, I believe.
Just staying on the middle school and West, let's go down to Project Challenge while we're on the middle school.
And then I don't wanna skip.
I'm not gonna go back to that, but since we're on,
World
we're gonna maybe we'll get with the middle school stuff.
Under number 2.
Yeah, grades 3 to 8. What's the thinking there?
Well, and we've already reduced that, we've already made the cut to 1.0.
Right.
So this would be,
Well, not necessarily.
well, no, that would, no, in the budget.
In the budget,
In the
right.
budget. Right, correct. So, and looking really truly at numbers and how many students it would impact, other than adding it and reducing the class size. This was one of the ones that we had come up. Obviously it's not ideal. It is servicing fewer students than a classroom would be kidding.
Yeah.
But we'd have to drill it. It would be tough to make it work, but we could make it work where we would just keep that,
I worry if we completely eliminate it, I worry about that population of students. I think they do need time with their peers. I think just the academic, but also the social emotional piece of supporting those students.
How many students are?
It's not that many really, it's, you know, maybe no more than 20 at grade level.
20 grade level.
We talked,
Like
no more than that, it wouldn't be, we've always done it in small groups. I think one of the things that we could consider doing, instead of having 2 sections per grade level, this year one grade only has 1 section. I just, I worry about how, you know, it's, obviously we're not going up to 24, but typically we keep these, you know, more like the 8 to 12 range. And if we raise the class size, is it still doable? Does it change the nature of the class that much that it's completely different? This is the one I'm very worried about. I don't feel comfortable making this recommendation.
Yep.
Maybe, I don't think we
None
felt
of these are
comfortable.
no, we didn't recommend it.
I know.
This was
I didn't
the
think that.
one,
No,
the
I
last
just-
one,
I just
well, we could,
We're not, these aren't recommendations,
Right.
we
Right.
were
And I don't know what the impact is. You know, we have students every year that are identified as talented and gifted that choose not to participate. But for those who do choose to participate and really thrive and benefit from this program,
we also talked about whether, because of that social emotional component, is there a way to pull those students together in a different way? Occasionally with our counseling staff
And
or.
if someone was moving to the district and they called and said, what does your district offer? We would say nothing, right?
Correct.
Well, but we, you know, we do differentiate within the classrooms, so we
Right.
can provide
We don't
that,
have
but
that-
we
we
would
don't
not,
have
and we would
that.
identify, but we wouldn't provide.
and I guess I do feel like we have at the middle school, we have a strong co-curricular program where we have opportunities for math competitions, for robotics competitions, for our musical, our show. We have the ensemble groups.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not recommended, again, strategically though, since I've been here, there's been a discussion around how to best serve gifted and talented children. And is Project Challenge the best way to do that? Because we worked really hard on differentiation and supporting teachers in the classroom, more of a push-in than a pull-out model. And the research is very strong across education that you tend to do better with push-ins than pull-outs. But you know, it's been here, it's under Amanda and Rudd, it's gotten to new levels of strength. And so it would be a loss. And you would not have a specific gifted and talented program to acknowledge for families hunting for districts. Now, a whole bunch of districts don't have that, but a number do. But I think at this point, with the SIL support and all the rest, the principal support, the assistant principals, all the things that you do not see on these lists, we work hard at differentiation and supporting teachers with that mix of students in the classroom.
Yeah,
You
this
know,
one
so-
troubles me. I think that there's, you know, this falls under, you know, I don't know if it's special education, PPS in the binder, and, you know, I feel like you know, we're always presented with when children are identified for that category, that they get what they need by state and federal requirements, which is fine. This segment of children, this is the second year in a row that this comes up as a potential cut, and I think it's, you know, we're a district that's invested in the EL, after bracket, what is it, ruler, the ruler study and the DBT and the social emotional learning, and these, you know, these kids that are identified for this isn't, you know, always necessarily like a pre-AP segment of the population. I mean, these are kids that learn a little bit differently and need to associate with their peers and pursue interests that the school district isn't necessarily focused on. So I think it would be a tremendous disservice to cut this program. I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's go back up to, world language, Albert.
One correction here before you start, where it says 1.0 FTE for K2, it's actually 0.6. It's reversed for grades 3 to 5, it's 1.0. So we have to just adjust those numbers.
What was that again, Ken?
It's 0.6 for Hurlbut and it's 1.0 for the WIS.
So it's 1.6 total.
It's 1.6 total.
Yeah, so let's talk about K to 2.
So eliminating the K2 program eliminates an entire program for our students, and it does impact every kindergarten, first and second grade child in our building. Since I've been at Hurlbut, we have redesigned the program, so that is really built around language, but is supporting the curriculum that we have in the other content areas. It's really about developing thinking skills and cognition for children through a language. So, for example, if in one of the grades you're studying shapes, they would be learning shapes in Spanish, so that it not just it exposes them to the language acquisition, but also to the concepts that they're already learning, and those skills in the regular classroom. It's very much tied to our curriculum. It was tailored to our specific school. I observe the classes frequently. It is a phenomenal program. The level of implementation of the program I am consistently impressed with. I think our children get a lot out of it. I'm very impressed by their understanding, even just in kindergarten, what they're able to understand and start to communicate to each other in another language. It would be a loss. It is sometimes a question I get. The top two questions I get when I speak to families who are looking at towns is class size and then the whole language program. We don't have, it's a primary building, we don't have a lot of other programs, so this is something that really does add to our program.
I'm just gonna say, I mean, you know how I feel. I think that language needs to begin at birth, if not sooner. And that we're investing in later years of language acquisition by beginning in kindergarten, because it is, and if any of the other board feel differently, we should talk about it, but otherwise I honestly think this should be taken off the list. But I'm happy to talk more about it. I'm just saying, I don't think
No,
it's.
my only question is this program the right and most cost-effective program that we could use? That's my only question.
Right,
I
is
do
there
think we need
savings
world
here?
language in K to 5. I think so too.
Yeah, so I guess, so what you're asking is, are there any efficiencies here that we?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, 10 minutes a day, or, whatever, is that, I don't know.
I can speak to that too.
Yeah, not a language specialist.
Part of the reason it is 10 minutes a day is entirely in Spanish. It's an immersion. There is no English. And 10 minutes of only Spanish to a kindergartner is a long time. So the program is very carefully designed to be able to do that. There really is an immersion model at that very beginning level. I know at one point there was a question about, could we do like an online program or like a Rosetta Stone? I honestly I don't think that's worth the time of the program. I would put those 10 minutes somewhere else if we didn't have a
Well, I guess the question really is it really, is it the language in and of itself that will help a student who's going to eventually pursue language in a more serious way that's going to be helpful, or is it just the ancillary benefits that you're getting by being exposed to a different language at a young age? I guess there's two questions. One is it's just the broad benefit that one gets just from being exposed to a language versus ultimately when you get into high school, and does it improve outcomes? I guess those are two separate questions, and I'm not sure. I think it's important, but I'm not sure which question we're answering when we say it's important. Right.
Lisa
Well, we have
and
Lisa
Dan,
and
these are
Lisa.
both world language
Yeah.
teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that drawing an outcome connection, correlating it from this early to the later, this
Yeah.
faulty business, I think but there are other larger objectives here that's important that you have this. Again, this isn't, I mean, no one's recommending this, it's just how do you get there? And, so Lisa, Dan, we talked at length about all of these, and it's the second year talking at length.
Sure.
Probably the third year we've been going back to look at all of these.
We should pull out the video next year.
I mean, that's where we have been, we've been exhausted.
We have it on tape now, so we don't actually, we can just show.
But anyway, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can start.
No, I was just gonna say, I wanted to increase 6th grade world language to every day. That's where I would get started, but that's why I said we're going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I defer to Mercedes
Yeah.
too. I think it's, the earlier they start world language, the more, the students are able.
Yeah, I don't think this is something we should be talking at length about. I don't think this is something we're gonna endorse.
I mean, I would just say, if you look at your mission statement, it talks about global citizens.
Yeah,
So this is an evidence indicator that you are doing that. I mean, Mercedes' child speaks 3 different languages.
Yes, he's trilingual and he's taking German, and we started with my son taking German in kindergarten because We drive to West Hartford every weekend because we understand the importance of starting very early. So the research indicates it. Their pronunciation, their acquisition, they are just sponges absorbing everything. I really appreciate your support.
All right, high school course offerings, enrolling below 15. I see the list of courses though, I mean, these are,
That's always the
I
problem.
don't think we can eliminate that.
No, we're not, that's not even.
I see the list.
Let's just move on.
Yeah.
That was easy,
Yeah, I like that one.
Now, we had a discussion, I wish we had the video of the science para discussion from last year.
Somewhat.
So,
The elementary science fair.
yeah, so we talked about the importance of the science para last year. Now we're gonna talk about it again.
We can speak to that. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes into the science units. They're hands-on units, so there's a significant amount of setup, lab setup, materials that, it really is critical to be done. We already share our CIL for math and science. I only have CIL support for science 0.25. So to add to her workload, setting up and, facilitating labs, I don't know how that would happen.
I have a question on that. We used to do something where the kids from the high school would come, they were interested in teaching, and they would go to Hurlbut and they would help. Did that
We
ever
do have
come up
students
as
that come as an
opportunity?
internship model, but
Yeah.
our science units run throughout the year.
Throughout the day.
We also can't
Throughout the day.
displace, this is
We can't.
collective bargaining group work, this is ASU's work. So we can supplement it with the interns, that's fine, we just can't replace it.
Understood.
Yep.
Okay, well, that goes my question.
Okay. Do we need to talk about athletics?
No.
Because
No.
those teams won like state championships. Where's Mark?
Well, do you wanna speak a little to that, Lisa? You and Mark are talking.
Let's not discuss it, let's just
No.
move on. It was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
a
we're not even-
bad suggestion.
All right, just, I know Lisa done some prep work.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you wanna?
I don't think you'll wanna do it, right, Lee?
We got,
You can defend it, but we're taking it off the list anyway.
Let's get off those, I mean, Mark and I didn't agree necessarily, to be frank.
Yeah, none of us agree.
so you want it back on the list? No.
Just take it off, I guess.
Take it off,
That's
meaning
the
to not cut.
Yes.
Correct.
So-
Actually, it'd be more,
Clear overall.
We're on athletics, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm moving on, I'm
We're
going
moving on.
and,
case and
for
writing,
time,
case
yes.
and writing center, maybe we talk about those.
Yeah, we don't wanna cut them. Well, clearly, we don't do any of these things.
Right.
But, you know, when you look at the writing center, and I broke it down, the writing center is, related to a graduation requirement. And it's gonna be tied to the mastery, assessment that the class of 2023 has to have. Taking, you know, it's just, basically, those students will not be able to, have access to it.
I think it's absolutely necessary. I don't think it's requires anymore.
I mean, I took away staffing from elective classes to provide extra writing center in the
It's
budget.
super helpful.
And then to have to go backwards,
Yeah.
it's,
And
kind of heartbreaking,
So,
but then a lot of these
I'm good
things
on
are.
Is there anything, aside from this list, is there anything that you would recommend
You mean, that's not up here?
that's not on this list?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I mean, again, this team,
I'm just interested.
well, yeah, I mean, we can all answer that question, like it or not, this group of 10-11 has been working on these reduction questions now going on 3 years. You know, so, we've been looking exhaustively at everything. I have the list of the reductions we have taken worth about $2 million over the last couple of years. It was in last year's, budget presentation this year, because I promised you if you wanna see it the other night. We don't see anything else here. I mean, the other things you're gonna do are gonna have, either you go right into the classroom and class sizes, you go right into other course offering issues. Other districts have had to go to co-curricular areas, which we clearly don't wanna touch, arts, theater, music, athletics. You go into administration support in the buildings, be that clerical support or the level of number of assistant principals. You would go into reducing more at the cabinet level, but that work has to get then pushed down into the buildings. That's all work that needs to get done. Think of just any of the preparation, just think from Friday, when we started looking to get 3 million in cuts to what we brought you Monday night. That was a team of all of us working on that. If you don't have some of that team, you don't get that analysis as a board or that work. So, I mean, you could go into the business operations side, and then we're not gonna be as good on the budgeting. We have a history here of going into facilities and maintenance, and you can see the impact that's had. Others can speak, but again, 3 years of us working together by chance as a team, a lot of it around this, predating this cutback. That's why we worked through the optimization issue last year, last spring, coming into the fall. But I don't, the board's, clearly, rightly so, saying, what else is there? We feel this is the exhaustive list.
Well, I guess, before we get to
Yep.
the board's, thoughts on additional items to that, we just have a few more, places to go here. We're running close to 3 o'clock. Instead of the $10,000 and $40,000 items, I'd like to go down to the category ones I have, which are probably bigger issues in terms of, I think these all affect class size in one way or another. I think that we talked about, the only thing we really talked about in the first go around, I believe, was one
Grade
section.
one.
Yeah, grade one, and taking a bit of a risk on that, and not adding 2 sections, adding 1.
I will say, even WIS's reduction in 3rd grade worries me, because of where you are right now. You're already at 24 students per, yes, and I've been in classrooms where there are 20, it's a lot. So that's another risk on the table.
It's exactly 24 in every class.
Yes.
For next year proposed.
Yes.
And then the same thing for the grade 4 reduction, we do that.
Right.
I mean, that one was on the projection, but
Yeah.
I already know.
The 3rd one you built into this book, though.
Tell me a little, I want to go through this. Reducing the K section by 1, that brings the class size, Laura,
To exactly 20.
to exactly
At the upper end of
20.
the guideline, we would.
Yeah,
Yes. If the projections are spot on like they were this year.
they were pretty
They were spot on to the
They were
number.
s-
We would start the year at the high end of guidelines at 20 per class, and we always pick up students throughout the year.
So
Okay.
again, that's another calculated risk.
So that's right.
But again, if one additional student came, it would mean one of the sections had 21 students and the others all had 20, correct? Yeah. So it's not like you're adding 2 students to every section, unless there's, 14 extra kids who enroll.
Which is a bit of an unknown.
Unlikely.
And in the, I get it in WIS.
And if I,
Where would the middle school and high school, those are new ones on the,
So,
what would they be? Is it kind of undetermined, or?
I'd have to really go through and
Okay.
make it specific once we know exactly what's approved. It would probably affect, some of our, intervention supports,
Mhm.
remember?
Well, I guess the question is, and
Where
I
this-
guess
Where this one,
maybe,
What does it represent? You don't know what it
That's
represents?
in your total 1.6, Lisa.
Oh, I have that.
Yeah, you
The
have.
middle school one?
The bottom, category 1.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, so
Yeah.
what was your
So we
thinking, Dan?
we already went from 9 to 8 sections, and now we're going from, and there's a little bit of cuts already, but that was
Yeah.
already in the proposed budget.
Yeah.
To go beyond that, it would be looking at, where we try to make people whole when we can with positions, and maybe we can't make as many people whole. It's gonna be, I think we talked about this, it's gonna be fractional
Right.
positions for the most part.
So like you take a teacher from a 0.8 to a 0.6 or a.
Right, exactly.
And do you have a map of what those are or
I'd
what
have
you're
to, I'd have to
thinking?
go through once I know what the final number is.
Yeah, there's,
So then this is not
There's moving
a
parts.
fully loaded employee number.
no,
Bill, it's not,
It's a fraction,
yeah.
it's an
because of-
aggregate of fractional
It's,
reductions.
right, correct.
So could we see what that looks like?
Well,
Yeah.
that's impossible at this point,
They don't know.
because it depends on, you
Okay.
can,
We've
So
been
without
doing,
seeing
because it's
exactly what it's
fractional.
like and knowing that it's unfortunate always, is it doable? I mean, are you feeling like and I know, listen, none of these are, we're interested in looking at, by the way.
So what I just talked about earlier with this, possible new schedule
Yeah.
For sixth grade might make it more doable.
Okay.
Might make it more doable.
Okay.
So I think it all depends on how the pieces fall together. It's like, it's so many different moving parts
I know.
that I think it could be doable. And we could try to mitigate the impact as much as possible, which is what we always do.
Will you lose any staff because they've been reduced?
Yeah, I think I'm already probably gonna lose some staff.
See,
Yeah,
that's
we-
what happens is you reduce someone from a 0.6 to a 0.4 or a 0.8 to a 0.6.
Or a 1 to an 8.
It's a 1 to
That's
an
what
8.
we-
That's the biggest hit.
Yeah, that's my,
1 to an 8, yeah.
that's my biggest worry, and that's why we would try to mitigate that as much as possible. What we've been able to do up until this
Because they
point
can't afford
is
to not work full-time.
Yeah.
really make it rare to have that happen.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the question really, if you basically look at this category alone, it's five FT, it basically goes, this is an area here that's 5 FTEs, that's almost $500,000. It's 5 FTEs out of 193 in the schools. But is there, it breaks down to kind of 100,000 sort of, let's call it per school, roughly speaking. And the question is there, if someone asks you, instead of, if you had to save a job, how do you take $100,000 out of
right.
your school budget? Like,
That's right.
that was, that's basically a question. I mean,
Well, I mean, that's what.
but I know you've answered it already.
Yeah, we looked at it, I mean,
I know.
yeah, I mean, because you're left with personnel.
We're all
Our
really
budget is
driven.
people.
I think we
Yeah.
We don't have
Yeah,
that
with
extra
this
programs,
always.
Right.
extracurriculars
Yeah,
like that.
because we're down to, please.
Books are
Right, they're not, yeah,
Oh,
because
wow.
you look at the rest of the categories, and the question is, how do you take that money out of the rest of the categories, and there isn't a lot in the rest of the categories.
Lisa, what do you think about all this?
I think it's very challenging.
Yeah.
I know the 1.0 FTE, the high school reductions, that are not related to 15 basically increases class size in certain key areas. Mainly, in looking at the projections, we had like 0.2 geometry. That can get tricky because you have 2 sections of geometry at 49 students. You have a couple of students from honors geometry need to go down, and then what? We're gonna have a 30 kids in a geometry class? So it's that kind of thing.
Do you think there's other places to find it in the high school, if not, instead of losing a job?
I think we've looked very carefully at all the programs.
And the
All the programs in the cost center of high school we've looked at. It's very challenging.
A couple of items, let's maybe go back, I just want to exhaust this list so then we can move on in the next meeting. The string and orchestra program,
I don't know, I mean, maybe philanthropy could cover it, I mean, we could talk about that, I think that's what we're talking about. You guys don't think so?
No.
It's too.
Okay. Is that, you don't even think it's worth talking about?
Well, it's
Well,
100
philanthropy-
students that participate in the string program
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah.
It's a lot, I mean,
Right, that's a minute. That's great.
yeah, I mean, you should come to the concert.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I mean, we can't
Yeah.
even put chairs down, they all
Concert was
stand.
beautiful.
I know. And
And the
I mean,
28,000 isn't the total cost of that program, is it?
that's a piece of his schedule.
that's
Right.
pieces.
And
So it's
string
so in
studies
other
generally
words-
start.
Right, but there aren't any other ancillary costs around that, okay.
Yeah.
When we
This
added
So,
that-
but to Hillary's point, I mean, if you,
when
if
we
you,
added
it
that, we
was
did a
funded
study
by
too, we really
philanthropy,
analyzed it.
so that
That
you
was
didn't have
several
to
years
kill
ago.
it.
Yeah, but you wouldn't want it, you don't want to tend to do staffing on soft money.
Right.
And this is a staff,
Right,
this
you
is
could
staff.
go and then
slice.
kick it back out
I
later.
mean, we worked really hard, this was years ago, it didn't start till 5th grade strings. Most districts start strings in 3rd grade. So we
No, I
worked
love
really
it.
hard
I
to
love
bring
it.
it to 4th grade.
I guess my question is, if we eliminated it, how would you be able to keep the program?
We would,
You absolutely would not.
no,
There's
so,
other way.
so in 5th grade, they'd have a choice of strings, band,
Alright, well, it's
so it would be, they just have to defer it, wait a
Okay.
year, so.
Okay.
What's,
Theater.
what's the solution for theater?
Theater's budget has gone gone up exponentially, we talked about this.
53% in 2 years.
53% in 2 years, I mean,
Why they don't have a booster program?
Yeah.
that's right, and we talked
We-
about that.
We can explain some of this.
Right, so there's two parts to it. The first part has to do with the soundboard, which I do believe we'll be able to get through philanthropy. So that's the 15,000, which I think we definitely can take that off. The second portion of that has to do, a portion of what's left has to do with an adjustment that we had to do with, that we've spoken about several times, with an adjusted stipend for the coordinator, which is roughly about 8,000 or so.
Well, it's a removal of the stipend.
Right,
And
so.
adding in of FTE.
Correct, so it's a net.
Same person.
Right, so net increase of that would be roughly about 8,000 or so. So, I mean, we could talk about it again if you guys would like.
Well, I actually think there's more to get at in that theater line, just because of the number of stipends there are in each school, and I love theater and I don't wanna see anything change, but there's more there, I
Yeah.
think.
We wrestled with that for years. It is a tough situation, and the reason is because if you wanna have the shows, you have to have the work done. The theater, the stipends that are in there are all negotiated with the WTA. So we actually, funny, a few years ago, the board wanted to talk about the idea, and we did, publicly, the idea of being able to give more money to people from the outside who may have special expertise. But that didn't come through. Ultimately, that would require negotiations, and we didn't achieve that. However, you have to, if you're doing a musical, you have to have someone teach the kids, say, dancing. You have to have a musical person. You could pare that down and just have but it would affect the quality of the program, which is a choice that can be made. But what would happen would be, you could just have your producer, your director, and like a backstage person, but you're not gonna have the costuming, you're not gonna have all that other stuff. Generally, those things are staffed by not our staff. They're stipends that are taken by parents in the community, because we don't have enough staff interested or with those levels of expertise. So yes, as I was saying before, I mean, we can cut, we can eliminate stipends. It just wouldn't be something that would be available to the theater program.
Yeah.
But yes, that could be done. We do have a rich, program.
Past boards have always talked about participation fees as well.
Yeah, for the theater.
For the theater.
Right, we are aware of those many videos on that.
Yeah, we have a lot of videos on that.
Gina will bring it up tomorrow.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. We'll find the videos.
The other items are equipment related. Honestly, I think it was really, really helpful going through this list because it just takes, we can quickly decide which ones to hone in on, which ones to quickly take off the table, and then move on to other things to consider, which gives us a good amount of time tomorrow. So my goal today was really to try to make our way through this list, to get it off the table, or to get the things that we truly think are gonna be off the table off, so that we don't have to continue having that discussion and then kind of move on to other things. And that brings us to 3 o'clock.
And now we're losing the
Have a
quorum.
motion to adjourn?
So moved.
6 o'clock tomorrow.
6 o'clock tomorrow.